At the end of this clip, you'll know the answer to this true false question. There are default intents which come set up when you first create an agent. Are they completely configured? Is there anything else that you need to do to get them to work correctly? Once you've created a brand new agent, Dialogflow will take you directly to the intents screen. This intent screen is where you get to if you click on intents on the left navigation pane. Notice that there are two intents already configured or set up on this screen, the default fallback intent and the default welcome intent. These are intents that you don't need to set up yourself. They are automatically created for you with every new agent. Let's first look at what the fallback intent is all about. Fallback intents are those which are triggered if the user expression or what the user says does not find a match with any other intent. If your agent is not able to figure out what exactly the user is saying, it'll simply call the fallback intent. It should be pretty obvious to you that every agent requires a fallback. There is something that you need to respond to the user with if you don't understand what he or she is saying, if you don't understand what they hope to accomplish with the bot. So, when you create a brand new agent, a default fallback intent is created for you automatically. You can go in and modify its settings if you wish. Another intent that is set up for you by default is the welcome intent. This intent basically has responses which welcome you to the chatbot, say interesting things or friendly things to keep the conversation going. The welcome intent is also set up for you automatically when you create a new agent. So far, we've done no configuring of our agent, we've just set it up. Let's see how it works so that you understand the various functionality that gets added as you add more configuration settings. Dialogflow provides a pane on the very right which allows you to test your agent as you set up its configuration. We'll type in hello on this test pane and see what the response is. With no additional configuration, the response to hello is I missed what you said. Say it again. Notice that Dialogflow has it marked as a default response. The intent that was triggered in order to give you this response was the default fallback intent. Because we have no other intent configured, the Dialogflow agent could not map it to any of the other intents, so it called the default instead. At this point in time, with no additional configuration of our agent, anything that we type in will go to the default fallback intent. So let's click on this intent and see how it's configured. There are a bunch of things that you'll see on the intent page. Let's ignore that for a bit, scroll down to the bottom, and notice the text responses that you can get from the default fallback intent. If you look at all of these responses, you'll see that they are all responses which ask the user to repeat what they said. Say that again. I missed that. Sorry, could you say that again? And so on. If you stop to think about it, this makes sense. If you can't understand or can't map the user's request to something that this agent should be able to do, you maybe have misunderstood the user or you have no clue what they're talking about. These text responses, which have been pre configured, make complete sense in that context. So you can see that the default fallback intent comes pre configured with all the text responses and all the settings that you need for it to be invoked. There is no additional stuff that you need to do. The fallback intent will simply choose one of these responses at random so that it seems more natural or conversational. If you want to add additional text responses, you can do so using the text box at the very bottom there. One thing for you to note in the default fallback intent is that there is no user expression which explicitly triggers this intent. This intent is triggered when the agent can't understand what the user is saying. So there is no user expression that you need to configure on this intents page. The role of the default fallback intent is very straightforward. Let's take a look at the default welcome intent and see what it does. The first thing that you should notice about the welcome intent is that it has a user says field. This field is where you type in the user expressions that will explicitly trigger or invoke this intent. Let's say that you type in how are you here. Whenever the user greets the agent and types in how are you, You can configure the responses to this user expression using the default welcome intent. There are a bunch of responses that have been pre-configured, such as hi, hello, good day, and so on. You can add new ones if you want to. But there are no user expressions that have been pre-configured in the welcome intent. So the welcome intent is just partially configured, not fully configured. So the default setting when you newly create an agent is a fully configured fallback intent and a partially configured welcome intent. Once you make any changes to your intent page, you need to go ahead and hit save explicitly before those changes are saved. And when you actually save the changes, you'll notice the gear icon on the top left moving. This is a visual indication to you that the machine learning model underlying this agent is being updated and trained with the changes that you just saved. Now, if you go ahead and type how are you on the test pane on the right, you'll get the response that you'd expect. It says greetings, which is one of the responses that is configured in the default welcome intent. You can also see that the intent that the agent mapped your query to. It was the default welcome intent, exactly what we expected. Now that you've learned all that you need to know about the default intents that are configured, you know that this statement is false. The fallback and the welcome intents don't come fully pre-configured. The fallback intent is fully configured though. The welcome intent is only partially configured. You still need to specify the user expressions to actually invoke the welcome intent.